Hello, this is Coach Aaron Saft on the Running is Life podcast. Got a really fun guest today in Jeff Stafford. Some of you may know Jeff from the Adventure Jogger podcast with Brian Pluckelman. He is just a great wealth of knowledge and has some tremendous experiences at some amazing races, to say the least. From the Vol State 500K to the third level of hell, just these amazing long races, as well as, just some shorter races, Savage Gulf and the Barkley Fall Classic, just some really cool stuff. So really happy to have Jeff on the podcast here. I certainly appreciate his time and willingness to come on and talk with me. I really hope you enjoy this conversation, and as always, I hope you take a bunch away from it. So here we are with Jeff Stafford. I'll catch up with you after our conversation. Jeff Stafford, he's here. How are you?
Good morning, good afternoon, good day, whatever. How are you doing?
Oh, doing great. It's great to see you. Of course, the listeners can't, but I'm glad I got the opportunity to see you and to chat with you. So thanks again for coming on, man.
No worries.
Some of our listeners, surprisingly, might not be familiar with you. So why don't you give us the 10-cent tour of Jeff Stafford, his background and where he came from and how he got into running?
Oh my goodness, you got about an hour?
Yeah, I do.
Well, the down and dirty side of it is running, I guess, came about is high school, running some cross country and track. I was not a varsity runner. I was a reserve or backup runner, if you will, whatever you call it. And did about a year of each and didn't particularly enjoy each other. Didn't love it, didn't hate it, but I'm like, meh, it's okay. So
where did you grow up?
Lincoln, Nebraska is where I went to high school, and most of my schooling is out in the Nebraska area.
Okay.
Joined the Army at a relatively old, ripe age of 18. Forego the college bit for a little bit. And of course, in the Army, you have to do what they call PT or physical training, usually 3, sometimes 5 days a week, depending on what's going on. But typically that's done at 5:30, 6 a.m. in the morning. You go stand in a formation. Everyone's wearing the same exact physical training clothes. You do some calisthenics, and then you run anywhere from 2 to 5 miles, depending on what's going on the day. And you actually kind of learn to love to hate running because you're running with a group of 30, 40, 50 other people at a pace you don't like, at a speed you don't want to run, at a distance you don't want to run, or it's just it's forced fun, I guess you could say. So you do it just because you have to. And it's, I understand why, but after I got out of the Army, some 26 years later, I said, I'm not going to run anymore because I don't have to. Nah. And I actually got out of the Army about early 2000s. And along about 2013, I think it was. Actually, it was Christmas, day after Christmas, 2013. I went for a walk with my then wife in the neighborhood and just walked. And the next morning got up and said, hey, let's go do that again. So we walked. I said, I'm going to jog down to the stop sign and back. I'll meet you there. And it got to be where my jogs were longer and longer each day. And finally she just said, oh, go ahead and run. So I run and started typical 2-mile training run, 3-mile training run, up to 5. And then I entered, like a 5K and did my first trail run and worked up to a marathon and 50K and 50-mile and 100K, the typical sequence of, and that's it. The rest is just kind of history. That's kind of how my running went.
Right.
So, but all that's been taking place since 2014, the running part.
Right on. And yeah, you've obviously had a few, Jeff, under, of course, as I said to Jeff prior to recording, that Ultra Signup is not the end all be all, but he has 57 races to his name on Ultra Signup. And some really impressive ones. I was kind of going through here. He's got 100-mile finishes. Went after the Vol State 500K, which I'd really like to hear about at some point in this conversation. And just a number of different types of formats. Early on, it was kind of your your 50Ks and marathons, and then it looks like your first 100 miler was around 2015, right?
Yeah, around that time frame, yes.
Yeah, which was the Mark Twain endurance runs. What
Well,
got you?
that was the first. That was the first one I finished.
Okay, okay. It doesn't have a DNF on here, so my apologies for anything else. But why don't you talk about what led up to that? What got you going? Because you kind of, obviously grew your distances, and then within a year, you're already looking at 100 miler. So, what was the evolution of that?
I run with a couple buddies here in town. One is my podcast host, Ryan Pluckelman,
Yeah,
and another is Travis Esterby. He owns the local Fleet Feet store here, and we run together quite a bit
nice.
of late. But they had been running some years before I even started, and I don't know, somehow I went to a Fleet Feet fun run one night and met up with them, and we got along, and I kind of volunteered to go help Ryan with his 100-mile race. He did the Ozark Trail 100, I believe it was, and
Okay,
it gave me the bug. So
I see.
did 50K, 50 miler, and the very first 100 miler I attempt was the Indiana Trail 100
Okay,
on the old course format, where I believe it was 4 25-mile loops. And Ryan and Travis both came up to crew and paced me on that. And I was underprepared, failed miserably. And at about 67 miles, I said, nope, I'm done. It was more of a physically, I had time to walk and complete the course, but I was of the mind, oh no, you have to run these things. You have to run the whole thing or you're a failure. And I had a couple little aches and pains, but basically my mind gave out on me is what it is. I just let it win and learned a lot from that. And then I signed up for the Mark Twain 100. Neither of those two guys were available to crew or pace. So my daughter came out to crew me, and she had no crew experience, had no idea what I was doing, what she was doing. But I completed it. It was an interesting night, and got through that. That kind of gave me the bug to, like, well, my goal is a sub 24. I got to get a sub 24 somewhere, and
okay.
It's been elusive. I think I have one or two, and I've had a couple close ones, and something always, you never quite have the day you want to have when you go out there. It's just something always happens, but that's part of trail racing.
It sure is. It sure is. I can attest to that for sure. So can we go back just a second? Something you said was really interesting to me. That you were your mind, like that's the biggest thing to me is the mind in these long events. And you said your mind just kind of gave up on you. In that statement, like what was that? Like how, were you just, fatigued? Or were you just not having fun? Like what ultimately led you to that decision where your mind was just not with you? What kind of state were you in that led to that?
Well, let's see. It was a little cold, but like dress warm, that wasn't the issue. And hydration, nutrition were okay for where I was at in that point in the race. I was new green to ultra running at that point. God bless my pacers at the time. They tried to convince me otherwise. They just say, well, let's go to the next aid station. We'll talk about it there. The typical things a good pacer will say to you to keep you moving. And I still to this day, I'm not quite sure why. I think it's just because I was new and didn't understand that what my body could do at the time.
Right.
And the body can do so much more than you give it credit for. It's really amazing. And as a result of that race, I've gone on to do other 100-milers and Vol State and Heart of the South, and recently the Third Circle of Hell race, which all three of those races, yeah, they're long distance, but it's really it's all in the mind is how you get those races completed.
Right.
And you learn to become mentally tough, I think is what happens.
And, Courtney Dauwalter is famous for, stating that it's the pain cave and being able to excavate that pain cave. And I had this conversation recently with one of my athletes, because it was his first 100. And I don't think when you're, like you said, green to 100 miles, your mental ability to encapsulate what is 100 miles when you get later into that race and the challenges present themselves, not only mentally, but physically. You just don't have the tools yet to understand what, you can do, if you haven't had previous experience, if you're that new to running, whereas like an athlete that's been running for a long time, they've been marathoning, etc., they have more tools because they've experienced that pain to some capacity. 100 miles brings a whole new challenge to the mental game. But if you start to have those tools, then you're able and capable of it. Whereas like somebody that just started running and they're building towards that longer distance, they don't have those tools. And that's what a lot of times takes them out, because they're not capable of understanding what you just said. The body is capable of so much more. It's just, making the mind understand, yes, we can continue. So I totally understand where you're coming from and what you're saying. As I said, I just experienced that with one of the athletes I coach, and it's just trying to teach them there are tools to use. It's just you have to practice using those tools and understand what they are, so that when the situation arises, you can employ them. So,
right,
absolutely.
A lot of trail roasts I've seen younger guys, younger gals, in their 20s, 30s, sometimes up in their 40s. I'm old. I'm 97 years old. Is what Ryan. It's funny, how eventually you can pass and literally crush some younger runners because they don't have the mind or mental tools to get them through a race sometimes. But it'll come with experience. It'll come.
Yep.
But it took long to realize, your mind is an amazing tool in itself.
It is. It's, one of the keys to being a successful ultra runner is just training the mind. We oftentimes train the body, but oftentimes neglect the mind. I have my runners read Mental Training for Ultrarunning by Addie Bracy, especially if they're planning on doing a 100-miler. I said, you need to go through this. If you've read it already, go back through and do, the work activities. And think about these things on your run, just so you're constantly thinking about, okay, if this obstacle presents itself, this is the tools I have to combat it. And if I don't have those tools, then it's a conversation that needs to be had, either with myself, a training partner, somebody to help you, kind of figure out what is the possibility of getting through this this problem. But yeah, I think that's a huge piece. And another book that I always recommend is Travis Macy's book, The Ultra Mindset. He has a lot of good mental tools in that book. So I use the tools that are out there. I don't know if you've read either of those books, but I think there's some great things in there. I took away, and I'm not a sports psychologist, and either of those two, but they have brought in some great sports psychology into helping us understand how to get through those tough moments.
If you don't mind, afterwards, if you send me the titles of both those books, I'll look.
Yeah, absolutely. Fantastic stuff. There's some great stuff out there, but those two are very specific, obviously, to our sport. But yeah, thank you. And back to your experiences. Let's go. There's so many questions, but let's just dive in. What's been your favorite experience or your favorite race thus far?
Oh my gosh. I don't know if I have a favorite race so much as I have a favorite distance.
Okay. What's your favorite distance?
My fun races, the ones I like to do, is a 50K race.
Okay.
It's just, it's something you can drive to, be done in a quarter day, whatever it is, and drive back home. They're just so enjoyable. You get to see all your friends and enjoy things a little bit and get some miles in, and a little touch of pain here and there depending on the day. And they're just a lot of fun. The first 50K I think I did was Oak Mountain down in Alabama. It was a fun time down there.
Nice. But that's this day and age, there seems to be like a million different races, a million different formats. And 50K is still present, I'm glad to say, but it seems like we're starting to lose a few of the other distances, kind of the in-betweens, if you will, because the focus has become on the 100-miler and now, plus, we'll just say, 100-mile plus, right? When because you've been in this almost 10 years, where do you see the sport kind of diminishing, and where do you see it growing?
Well, I hope we continue to see growth as far as numbers of runners, because a big race does good things for a race director. They get their little money and stuff that they earn. Some don't, but I want to see that continue to grow. Where I think we're diminishing some is, and I'm talking trail races here, is a lot of, not a lot, but do you see a lot of trail runners with I'll call it attitude problems, in that they think they're deserving of this or that or whatever. I don't have to follow the rules, or it's okay to litter, or those little things like that. And it adds up, and it drives me crazy when I see people do that kind of stuff. It's like,
For sure.
seriously, just stop, before you out here and run with your friends.
Yeah. It's
a little bit of diminishing in that area.
Fair enough. I oftentimes wonder, we talk about the accessibility and growth of our sport, but we've got these races, and we'll just call them bucket list races for
Sure.
our intents and purposes. But everybody now is shooting for those races, right? So the accessibility and continued growth, I think, also diminishes everybody's opportunity, and accessibility to certain races as they grow in popularity.
Sure.
And it's tough because they can't do it twice in a year, so it makes the sport sometimes a little bit more inaccessible because we're trying to make it more accessible. So it's kind of like a catch-22, right? Everybody wants to run Western States. The lottery keeps growing, but it's the opportunities are limited. That doesn't change. So, I think people get frustrated because they're waiting. Like, had I not gotten in through the raffle into Western States, I was on like year 7 of the lottery, and now my tickets are still there. So it would be year 8 of going into the lottery. But people wait a long time, and then like, not that there's an answer to it, right? Like there's no answer to it. I just bring up the kind of the point so people understand. It's like we all have to wait our turn, whether it be Western States, Hard Rock, UTMB, these type of races. It's really tough. And you've got to run some really cool ones, like you were talking about Ball State. That's a tougher race to get into. How many times did you apply for Ball State?
I'm trying to think. Ball State is relatively simple to get into. It's not.
Oh,
it's
okay.
not. They run a wait list for it, but if you're on the wait list,
Yeah.
you're all certain to get in, because the turnover rate is that high. For whatever reason, people back out to like the last minute, particularly the last month or so. They're backing out left, right, and
Gotcha.
I've seen everyone off the wait list get in before.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Well, another one would be Barkley Fall Classic. I've applied there and been on the wait list and not gotten in a few times. But there's a lot of popularity to the sport, and Laz has done a tremendous job of coming up with different formats and different types of races. And for our intents and purposes, people may not know what the Ball State 500K is. Why don't you talk about that, and let's get into your experience with that race, because that's a really interesting race.
Okay, so Ball State is first of all, everyone needs to know it is a road race. Okay, it is not a trail race. It is 314 miles or 500 kilometers, whichever you prefer. It takes place primarily on smaller highways and back roads. Starts in Dorena Landing, Missouri. You ride a ferry across, and your time starts when you get on that ferry. So your time is running when you get on the ferry, and you touch land over in Tennessee, and you run a designated course, which stays the same year after year after year. So it's no secret. And you end up in a place called Castle Rock, Georgia, which is, if you can imagine, where the Tennessee state line, Georgia, and Alabama all converge to make that 3-point area.
Okay.
You're within all that is where you finish, but you're on the Georgia side, actually. So, but it's You can do the race. It's called crewed, meaning you can have a crew, or screwed, meaning you have no crew. You're doing it on. And I elected to do it on my own in 2019, the first year I ran it. And it's quite the eye opener. It briefs well. You rehearse it. You know this. You plan this. You plan that. You get all your gear, your kit, everything together. You got your foot care locked down and hydration, nutrition. Like I said, it briefs well, and then you get out there and start moving. And the first day is not horrible. I think I ran 73 miles the first day. Your top runners, probably the eventual winners, are going to be somewhere between anywhere from 95 to 110 miles. In that range is where they would be. But you got to realize you are relying upon yourself. Screwed. You have no one to crew you. So you have to carry all your food, all your water, all your foot care stuff, everything. You can stop at a hotel if you choose. If you get off the route, I'd typically, if there's a hotel available, I'd get off the route, jump in the hotel, spend about 3-4 hours of rest, get a shower, wash your clothes in the sink, jump up, put them on, and get back on the road. But you have to join the exact same spot that you left. So if the hotel's a mile off course, that mile doesn't count. You got to take that exact mile back to where you left. Same thing with food and hydration. You're living off of Dollar Generals and 7-Elevens and gas stations. And you're like, oh, well, what about the nighttime? Yeah, what about the nighttime? Those little country stores and stuff are closed up at night. So you learn to carry what you need with you. And most people prefer to do their running at night. You end up walking power walking, but you end up walking quite a bit just because, like I said, you brief it. You tell yourself, well, I can run 50 miles a day. Well, can you? Have you tried it? Have you ever done it? You don't know till you get out there and do it. And you're exposed to the sun. It's just brutal on that asphalt. Ball State takes place in July, probably the hottest month in Tennessee. You're on black asphalt, no shade, typically no shade. And the ambient temperature usually is between 90, 95 degrees, humidity anywhere from 70 to 90% humidity. But you got to realize the heat radiating off that asphalt is as high as 120, 125 degrees. So it really takes its toll on you, and you're running on a cambered road. So your feet just take a beating. I mean, a beating. Your joints are sore. Everything hurts. This is where having that strong mental game, when you have to tell yourself to just F off, for lack of a better word, and keep pressing on with what you're trying to get accomplished. And I forget the Vol State record. It's either a very high 3 days and 23 hours or something, or very low 4 days and something. But I managed to pull out what was it? I think 5.5 days. I think I pulled it. I can't remember the exact number, but
yeah.
But Vol State is, so that's, and Laz calls this a journey run, and it is a journey because you learn a lot about yourself and the road and running, and it's just a lot of fun. It's one in a trilogy of his journey races now, and Vol State is now considered the entry level journey run. Came up with the second journey run about 5 years ago maybe, called HOTS, Heart of the South.
Yeah.
And it's much like Vol State, except everyone that runs that is screwed. You cannot have a crew.
Interesting.
And the route is not published. It changes every year. You don't get the route until the night before the race, much like Big Barkley. You don't see the route. You don't have a clue what it is. You just know where you're starting.
Yep.
Then this summer he came out with the what he called the graduate level course. It was called the Third Circle of Hell, and same type of thing. It is, you don't know the route. Everyone, actually, this one you could have crew on. I didn't know that at the time, but you could have crew. But it is tough, much tougher because it is almost all back roads. I mean, just unbelievable. This is a road, and he'd take you into a town, and you'd think, okay, I'll go down the main drag here and hit the gas station, and this, that, and the other for whatever I need. No, he'll take you off a side road to purposely take you around the town to mess with the line. So if you want those services, you have to hike into town to get it and then hike back. So it's a big mental game.
Yeah.
But managed to complete that one in, I don't know, 7+ days. But
that's awesome.
Those are the types of races. And I think you hit on earlier, you mentioned patience. All these races, that now have wait lists or lotteries, it all comes down to being patient, biding your time, keep reapplying year after year, whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
And it'll happen.
Right.
Yep.
Right. And where do you think your patience and your mental capacity to do these, was that formulated in the Army or, post Army, a combination?
It's definitely a combination. I think the groundwork for it, the base layer, if you will, was formed in the Army, and particularly the last 8 years that I spent in special operations. Because quite frankly, special operations it's a no-fail mission.
Okay.
So you have to be able to compartmentalize your brain to do whatever it takes to get that mission done. And so that played a big part, along with the experiences of trail running and, learning those things that, oh, your ankle hurts. Well, how bad does it hurt? Can you keep walking? Because if you can walk, you need to keep going. So, those like, and just, it was a combination for sure.
Now your ultra sign up, forgive me, it only lists the Vol State 2022 as a DNF. Do you have others?
I've only run Vol State twice, in 2019 and in 2022. I DNF'd. That time I had some serious issues in that race, serious foot issues, to the point where I stopped. I found a laundromat, laid down the laundromat to sleep for a couple hours. I should know I was in bad shape before I got to the laundromat, but got some sleep, and my feet were so.
I remember those posts.
When I found that I could only walk 1 mile in an hour, that was max speed. That was all I could do. I did the math, and there was no way I could finish in 10 days, because you have 10 days to finish Vol State.
Right.
So don't let my times of 5 days, 6 days, whatever. No, you have 10 full days. You can literally walk the entire course of Ball State in 10 days. You need to do 31 miles a day. You can walk 31 miles a day, no problem.
Right.
But
Hunt Bremley, he talked about that.
The math was just showing me you cannot finish this race.
Yeah. And you didn't see that changing just based on the condition of your feet?
No, they were only getting worse.
Yeah. Gotcha. You've got these long races, obviously. Beforehand, is there a point in which you tell yourself, if I get to this is the time where I'm okay with DNFing? Do you have that limitation, or do you not set that prior?
I typically don't set it. I just don't. I try to give it my all, and I think I've only DNF'd Indiana Trail 100. As I said, that won't ultra sign up because that was an old run sign up event, I think. Gotcha. Or some other. Gotcha. Yep. So it just doesn't show up. That was my very first 100, which happens to a lot of people on their first ultra.
Right.
And Vol State in 2022. Okay.
That's pretty impressive. That's pretty impressive. Given all these races that you've done. And I mean, the backyard, you've done a backyard, you're wearing your shirt there. Yeah. Talk about that. I mean, I'm sure most people are familiar with the format, but if you would just kind of explain the format real quick, and then just kind of talk about what that what that entails and what that was like, and what it got to be like later in the race.
Okay, depends which backyard you're talking about. This particular one is a spinoff of one of Laz's. Laz, I guess you say he's the originator of the backyard events.
And those that can't see, he has Grind on the Grid Backyard Ultra.
Yeah, no relation to Gary Cantrell, but he put this one on, and Ryan and I ran that. But backyard events are typically a fixed course. If you're true to the distance, it's 4.16667 miles in length.
Right.
And you have 1 hour to complete that distance. You complete that. If you get done 20 minutes in 40 minutes, you got 20 minutes to sit down and do whatever you want. Eat, drink, sleep. Then the whistle will blow and you get up and you go run it again and again and again. And you keep going until literally the last man is standing. So
right.
Those are, if anything else, those are good mental training races. It's just because it makes you get up and keep going when you could just sit in that lawn chair or lay down in that tent and just stay there, But right. It's kind of I kind of like point-to-point races or long out and backs because in my mind, the problem with loop type races, particularly short loop races, it's a huge mental battle.
Yeah. It gives you the excuse to just stop because you're back at the start.
Want to build some mental muscle, do some of those events, and it'll show you a lot about yourself. It's pretty interesting.
How far did you end up getting in this one, and what took you out?
Okay, all of the backyard races I've done Laz's actually a couple of times, big dogs. I got in off the wait list off both times I did that, not thinking I'd ever get in, but got in. And fortunately, unfortunately, however you want to look at it, most of those races I had 100-miler scheduled within a couple weeks of, and that was my A race, that particular 100-miler. So I only used the backyard event as a training run, and typically I'd only run 30 or 40 miles intentionally, and I'd stop and say, I'm done, because that was my final long training run.
Yep.
Could have went further, yes, but at the time that was my A race or goal. So
sure.
All these training runs, and it's good mental training, like I said, very good mental training.
Yeah. I mean, you had let's see, the race we were just talking about, Grind on the Grid, was April 15th, leading into the Three Sisters Ultra Trail Festival, which was a 24-hour event. Was that another training style event?
It was, and my primary reason for going out and doing that was to help a friend of mine pace him and crew him. And the information I got was, well, no one can be on the course unless you're a runner.
I see.
So, okay, I'll sign up, run the event, but I'm only pacing and crewing. So subsequently, you don't get a lot of miles, but I got to pace him at the same time, and then sit down and rest and crew. And again, another type training run. It just happened that way.
Which led you into the last annual Heart of the South road race, which you talked about earlier, which you finished in 6 days, just over 6 days. That experience, what made you turn around about a week later and do Hail Mary, the 6-hour run?
I like I said, it was just to help him out on that run, but it was
so the Hail Mary was another like pacing.
You're talking about third circle hell.
So it has listed.
I don't think.
Oh no, I'm sorry. It was a month after. I'm sorry, it was a month after. It has Hail Mary 6-hour run. Was that another just training run, or just something you were helping a friend out? Yeah, okay, gotcha. Yeah, I was looking. It's June and July, so I was thinking they were both like June. My fault. What does recovery look like for you?
Well, recovery, as an aging runner, I can say that because I am old. And I've learned as an aging runner, my mind a week after a race is, okay, let's go. Let's get back on the road, to get back on the horse.
Right.
The body, not so much. It takes longer physically to recover as you age. It just does. That's the reality of it. And I've had to learn it the hard way a couple times. I think after the race I did in August called Third Circle of Hell, it's 371 miles. I didn't run or even go for a walk for over 3 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm beginning to kind of understand why, let's take elite runners, for example. They run some pretty hard races when they're on. I mean, they're putting everything they've got into that. And now I understand why a lot of them take 3 months off of running. They just take it off. I'm like, you know what? I kind of get that now.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to run year round. If you're doing it for fun, yeah, but I'm good, bad, or indifferent. I'm a competitive type of guy. I like to compete. That kind of gives me my mojo. So yeah, it's just something you gotta deal with.
You gotta listen to your body. Yeah, it's a conversation I'm having with my athletes today. I do Zoom call on Mondays, and we're talking about that. Finish your A race and then take a break. Like, I finished the Grand Slam, and now I told them, I said, I scheduled a month at least off. I said that's what I necessitated, was that I need at least a month. If I need more, I'll take more. And ultimately, it comes down to, where is your body and where is your mind, right? Like you said, your mind is ready to go. And sometimes your mind's not. If you've had like a really long season, done a lot of races, you may need that mojo back, and it may just be your mind needs longer. Your body may be ready to go, but if your mind's not, I would still hold off and still recover. So, but yeah, it's a great conversation and a great point. Just listening to every piece of the body, right? Like, and I think people underestimate just how much these races take out of us down to a hormonal level, so it's being okay with taking that time off, because you'll come back healthier, stronger, and able to train better. So taking that time off is, it's vital.
I have learned that taking that time off, yeah, you lose some aerobic fitness, you lose some fitness while doing that, but you can gain it back relatively quickly. I mean,
yes,
not like starting out brand new running again. It comes back. Not overnight, obviously, but you can build back race speed pretty quickly.
Yes, the aerobic capacity, it takes a long time to lose your aerobic capacity. It's usually your max VO2 that starts to diminish the most quickly. Which, training aerobic, like I said, that comes back quick, and then you can redevelop your max VO2. So, but yeah, so that time off.
There's a question you didn't ask me, and that a lot of people do sometimes, is they're like, why? What made you decide to run Vol State or HOTS or Third Circle of Hell? Those are all 300 plus mile events, on the road, summer, it's hot, it's miserable. Why would anybody do that? And I often say I do those things because I don't like road running. I don't like the heat. I don't like this, that, or the other. And it builds your mind.
Right. Yeah.
Really does.
That was going to be a later question, but that's great.
That's why.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, building your mental fortitude and your mental strength is just incredible. And you have to do those hard things in order to do so. It makes the other races that much easier when, you've experienced that really excruciating race that you're just suffering the entire time through. So no, that's great. Any deeper portion, like, not just these races, right? Like, you've just defined why you do those, but like, if you were to choose another race, just let's just say you chose like a 100K or a 100-miler, and it wasn't any of those circumstances of which you just defined, being hot on the road, etc. What do you find is your why? Why do you do that event? What's that goes into that?
The races, other different distances, oftentimes I ask myself, and typically I don't run the same race year after year after year, with a few exceptions. I run BFC quite a bit and Strolling Gym quite a bit. But typically it goes back to my competitive nature in that I'm like, can I beat myself? Can I do better? It's a challenge. It's a personal challenge to myself is my why.
Yeah.
Other people, it's, I'm supporting cancer victims or whatever your why is. That's a big part in determining what I run and when I run it, why I run it, that type of thing. It's just,
Yeah.
I think it all comes down to, can I better myself? Not so much, can I beat runner X, Y, or Z? Can I better myself? Can I go run that 50K in in a sub 5? Can I, it just
Mm-hmm.
depends on what it is. But
Right.
set myself the goal and go from there.
I think some people select a race because of its popularity.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I think that can be the wrong choice. Not always, but not knowing the race, its history, the course, what the race entails, without doing that research, if you line up and you're surprised by the race and you're like, this is awful, like I don't like anything about this race, it becomes that much tougher to finish. So understanding what you're getting into, obviously, what the race entails, what the course is, etc. Knowing those things, not just the popularity of the race, but like why it's popular, because some races are just popular because they're really tough. And if that's not your style of racing, then you've got yourself into something, like some people don't even look at an elevation profile before signing up. And then, then they start researching the race after the fact and they're like, oh my God, what'd I get into? So
Example of that is I was at BFC in the last weekend. I was doing volunteer work because I'm kind of recovering from a bit of an injury, but I saw some people there. That was their first 50K. I'm like, oh my.
yeah, it was the same at Leadville this summer. I was like, oh, this is your
Like,
first 100, like, oh my gosh.
read
But
the race reports at all.
right,
It's
oh my god.
I've kind of evolved into. I mean, I like a challenging race, like challenge myself, but I like doing races now where you question yourself even up to signing up for it. Like I don't I don't know if I can finish this. I just don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And those things I'm really interested in now. And I may venture off and try some FKTs, may try some off trail stuff, may just different things that
Yeah.
I don't know.
That's awesome.
That's a challenge to me. It's that's it. That's what I like.
Awesome. And you just mentioned injury, which is another component that, comes around. Some runners, they try to fake their way through it when they probably shouldn't. But, can you
Right.
talk about injury for a moment and, what you've learned over the course of your career here?
Sure. I mean, it's injuries. I think after you've run trail, I'm back to trail again, and maybe road to some extent too. You kind of know what little niggles and what little bothersome things you can get by with. Some tiny blisters and joint discomfort, and those are typical things that trail runners experience a lot. And stomach aches, and you might have GI distress and just things like that. You kind of learn to deal with, but then there are others who are like sharp, excruciating pains that are not going away, when it's getting worse, and you try to run through it and you find yourself getting up in the morning limping when you get out of bed and things like that. Those are all like danger, danger, danger,
Red flags, red flags.
back it down and or stop for a while and go see the doctor, get it figured out. I know we all hate going to the doctor because we don't want to miss a running day, God forbid. But sometimes you have to do those things, and
Yeah.
it really does come down to listening to your body. I know it's cliche and people say it all the time, but you got to learn. You got to learn when to listen.
Yeah, absolutely. No, absolutely. Thank you. What is your training look like? What does that entail? Do you have any like benchmark workouts or long runs that you like to see happen, throughout training or in your training?
Well, I kind of leave that up to my coach now. She takes care of a lot of that because
Excellent.
I found when I was doing my own, and here's the thing: I'll go run but I run what I think I need. And, it gets repetitive, and you're like, okay, I got a 100-mile race coming up. I want to schedule a 50K 2 months prior, a 50 miler 1 month prior. And then my taper I figured out is what's good for me is about 2 weeks prior. I'll start backing it down. A lot of people are 3 weeks or more, but just, you gotta kind of plan that stuff out a little bit and look at it.
Yeah. And give a shout out to your coach. Who's that?
My coach is Becca Jones, local. Well, she lives about an hour away, but she takes care of, she'll assign me something. I'm like, and I'll look at the assignment and you question yourself, like, why in the hell would she assign that? I was doing a big long run and she's got me doing an hour and a half of power walking today or whatever or she'll assign speed work. You're like, oh, I hate speed work, just like that. So it mixes it up, which keeps me honest. Otherwise I'll only do what I want to do or what I think I need to do. And sometimes it takes a second or third or fourth set of eyes to look at you and go, you could do better if you do X, Y, and Z. So it's not that a lot of us necessarily need a coach. Some people need the coach for that experience to lean on, or they need the coach for that hydration and nutrition planning, or they need the coach for, like me, I just need someone to put together a daily plan for me that I wouldn't think of doing, and sure. Things like that.
Yeah. Have you built other members of your team? And by that, I mean, like, you have a coach. Do you have like a physical therapist, a massage therapist, etc.?
I do not. I know this may be, I have never been to a physical therapist. I have never had a massage. It's just, I keep saying I need to go experience and do that. And some people will be like, oh my God, you'll be in heaven if you do that. Like, I just never have. It's not that I'm afraid to do it or whatever. I just haven't. But it's a relatively small group that she trains, but she's out right now doing I think it's a 640-mile race across Tennessee from the very southwest corner, the Memphis area, all the way up to the very northeast corner, kind of catty corner of the states.
Yeah. Oh my
She's
goodness.
doing a opioid crisis within Tennessee. Wow. So it's a good cause, and she's cool. She's out there working.
Does she have, if you would send me the link to that and we'll put it in the show notes.
Sure, we'll do that.
Yeah, her fundraising link. That'd be awesome. So going on basically 10 years here, looking through it, you've mentioned a few of them, but how have you evolved? How have you changed? What has changed the most since you started running for you personally?
I mean, well, you get the obvious. Your physical abilities improve. Particularly those first 2 years that you're running. That's probably your biggest physical changes and gains that you see, and then it's just fine tuning from that point on. But biggest learning things we've talked about it time and time again here is the mental game. It's you can look back and say, boy, I was a complete idiot. That 50 miles. What was and it's just funny how, and that continues to grow even to this day.
Yeah.
It's amazing the little bits and pieces, the more you're around people, what you pick up, what you learn, how it can be as simple as blister care. I remember when I first ultra just ran right through the 50K with a huge hill blister, did nothing about it. And I'm like, you idiot. But now I have several techniques, several methods and means to deal with those things and fix them. And
good.
And it's hydration, nutrition, all these things you have to catalog away in your brain up here. That continues to build. That's awesome. It helps on everything that you do.
What would be the missing piece right now? If you're like, if I could dial this in, it would be the biggest game changer for me.
I don't know if it's a particular piece, but I would like to, and it's nobody's fault but my own, I would like to build more physical strength. Knowing as an aging runner, it's increasingly harder to do, but I think there's room to do it.
Do you incorporate any strength training?
That's a key one, is strength training. I don't go to a gym or do anything like that. Don't lift any weights. Knowing full well I should. Particularly with some of the races I just described to you that I want to get into. Physical strength is an absolute key part of it. Core strength is huge. A lot of these races that people are just clamoring to get into actually don't involve a lot of running. It's a lot of other abilities that go along with it, physical strength,
right,
climb, rope climbing, just all those types of things. And yeah, I need to work on physical strength training.
Right on. And what's your biggest bucket list item? It does not have to be a race. What's your biggest bucket list item?
Oh gosh, I don't really have a bucket list.
Anything that you really would look forward to doing, if you had the opportunity.
I have good, bad, or indifferent. I have always wanted and aspired to get into the big Barkley race. I've always wanted, it's just been a goal of mine, knowing full well it's not something everybody wants to do. I know that, but it is one of those popularity type races now where it's increasingly harder and harder and harder to get into that event.
Yeah.
And I would love to be able to give that an attempt. I say attempt because 99% of the people that go fail. And, but that's just the type of race that interests me, those types of races.
Right. Have you been able to apply?
I have. Yes.
Yeah. Nice.
Yep.
Gotcha. Well, I certainly hope you have the opportunity at some point to experience it. That's pretty cool. So just want to be cognizant of your time, but in kind of closing and summation here, any parting words of wisdom or any thoughts you'd like to just leave the listeners with?
Oh gosh, I don't know. I'll say this: listen to these podcasts, your podcast, Ryan's podcast. There's a lot of good running podcasts out there, and try to find those that. These podcasts are primarily about trail running, but listen to some of your road running friends. I'm sure you all, well, maybe you don't call them friends, but listen to a few. They can teach you some things. They have different types of pain that they go through as opposed to a trail runner, and different mental game that they have to deal with that you don't. Go listen to some of those podcasts and check that out.
Right on. And lastly, how can people connect with you?
You can connect with me on my personal Facebook page. I think that's, just send me a friend request and I'll either say yay or nay, one or the other. But you can hear me on the podcast from time to time with Ryan Pluckelman on the Adventure Jogger. I'm kind of I liken myself to the Ed McMahon of Johnny Carson. I'm on there occasionally, and Ryan is the main host of the show, and he does a great job with it. And
absolutely, yes, I've had the pleasure of being on there. So I'll put that stuff in the show notes. Jeff, I want to thank you so much for all you do for our running community and for coming on and sharing your experiences and your knowledge. It's I really love that people can take away a lot from this conversation. So thank you so much, sir.
No worries.
Thank you again to Jeff for coming on. Man, I really enjoyed our conversation. Jeff just has so many great experiences. I'm sure we could have just rambled on and talked about all these different races and experiences and things he's done. So I thank him for everything and for being on. For myself, still in recovery mode, but doing well. Had a lot of people reach out and ask. I guaranteed myself a month off, which will take me into early October. October is my favorite month to run, so I am really itching and ready to run. My body feels good. I think my mind is ready to run again. I'm really starting to miss it. But really, taking the time that I promised myself off, as Jeff and I kind of talked about during the podcast, making sure we give our bodies that rest that it really needs. So, just taking a few more weeks off from running. So no training right yet. Just taking Mr. Miles, my dog, for a walk and enjoying my kids, going hiking with them. But no real running or training right now. Aside from a few little runs with the cross country kids, middle school is still in full swing. We're doing our cross country season in middle school right now. My daughter's just doing great. I'm really enjoying being her coach and being around the team. Just a really fun environment. We're making some new trails at the middle school, which is super fun. Love that. I've done a few trail work days out there and built a new bridge or reconstructed a existing bridge, and just cutting in new trails and stuff. So it's been fun. Really invigorating. So I'm enjoying that piece of it as well. As far as coaching goes, if you're interested in coaching, I do have a few spots that will be opening up here as we move out of September and into October. So if you want to have a conversation, perhaps not necessarily starting in October, but if you want to get started for early next year and kind of get on my radar for an athlete to be coached for a future event, don't hesitate to reach out. You can go through my website, runningislife.run, and reach out to me. All my other contacts are in the show notes, so feel free. Reach out and let's have a conversation. Usually I just send you a link to my call schedule, and you jump on and we have a conversation and kind of see if we're a good fit, and as well as when you want to get started, what are your goals? We talk about all that stuff. So reach out if you are interested. This week I head to Colorado. I'm really excited. So as this podcast release, I'll be getting ready to travel back to Colorado. I'm going to the UESCA coaching conference. The main presenter is Jason Coop. So just very excited to hopefully bring home some new information for my athletes, and being able to hear perhaps some new concepts that I haven't thought of, and so I'm very eager for that. Man, everything else is good here at the World of M. At the at the house here, and just in life. So I'm happy to report things are going the right direction. So but if you have questions, comments, people you want to hear from, or you yourself want to come on the podcast as a guest, I encourage you to reach out. Let me know, or send me a question through any of the avenues that are in the show notes. My next week's guest is going to be Scotty Coomer of 10 Junk Miles. Looking forward to our conversation, and also going to be trying to work on the October newsletter. Haven't done a newsletter in a while, and it's about time. So if you have not subscribed for the newsletter, it is free. I usually do it once a month. I'm going to try to get back on that routine since the Grand Slam's done. Please sign up for the newsletter on my website, runningislife.run. You can join there for free. And as I said, it comes out once a month. All the old newsletters are archived there. I write articles on running, training, racing, gear, shoe reviews, all that kind of stuff. I try to make the newsletter pretty worthwhile. So, and if there's anything specifically you want to hear about in the newsletter, by all means, let me know. But thank you guys for your time. As always, thanks to my Patreon supporters. It just helps me continue to do this. If you are in the financial place to support on Patreon, you can click on the link in the show notes or on my website. Really appreciate that support. Thank you guys for everything. And if you can't, that's totally fine. If you would just of course, like or subscribe to the podcast, share it with a friend, especially if you found the episode to be super useful. So appreciate you all, and until next time, keep moving forward, keep running, my friends.